Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Bill O'Reilly. I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live! Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by The Never Dry, the oldest bar on 6th Street you've never heard of. Drop by The Never Dry. Welcome everyone to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers, writing, acting, all the stuff behind in front of the camera in post. We pretty much do a little bit of everything, which is the way it goes whenever you're not working on multi-million-dollar films. It's the gift to me. I don't really look at it as a curse. I like being able to have my hands in the entire process. It's very, very difficult for me to relinquish creative control at any phase. Writing, like I'm co-writing a script right now, and really it's going to be co-storying because I will do all the actual writing. Like I don't do well reading other people's work and translating it in a way that feels organic to me creating something. And so we'll sit and we'll talk out all the ideas. I'll write. I'm sure he'll come back and judge everything and say, this is shit, do it again. And just throw it off the table. And I'll be like, yeah,
sounds
yes,
like
sir.
a fun job.
I just meant I was just starting the second wax, Mr. McFly. And same thing in post. Like I really struggle. I feel like every time, almost, there's been very, very few times, but maybe like once or twice where I hand over my footage to someone else and they do what I think they should do with it. I think you're the only person who's ever edited my footage that I was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Literally every other time I'm like, oh God, why'd they do that? It's so disheartening to see my footage get butchered because I shoot with a very specific idea in mind. And often whenever I'm shooting for someone else, I don't know what they're going to do with it. And so I tend to go a little more broad and general just so that they have options. Whereas when I'm shooting with my own edit in mind, I know exactly how it's going to work. I'm going to use this 2 seconds out of this 8-second clip, and it's going to sit here in the flow of this edit. It's just much, much better product for me. And so even just handing over creative control over something I have edited, like I've had other people do like sound mixing for me. And that's always super dicey. I don't know that it's ever been done perfectly to my taste. I've had some really good sound edits where I'm like, oh, that was really good. But I don't think I've had anything mixed or edited by someone else where I'm like, oh man, that's not just way better, but the ideas are executed to perfection. There's always been something where I'm just like, yeah. But it's a trade-off. It's usually like they made it sound so much better, even if some of the ideas got, rearranged. And for me, that's the good trade-off of like, oh yeah, I'm so much happier with what they did, even though some of the ideas got lost in the transfer. That's a part of the creative process too, of letting other people play in your sandbox. And I don't know, I think we take all that experience and use that to analyze films and see what did they do? Why did they do it? How does it translate? What's the impact on me? How does it feel as a film? Like there's so many ways to slice up a film. And I think we bring a lot of our own personal experience and knowledge into the mix when we're doing that. I don't know. What any response to all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's really hard to relinquish, any kind of creative, whatever you'd want to call control, I guess, for you. And that's hard because, especially if you take an idea from inception to writing to creation to editing, right? Like these are massive stages, right? And at any point, if you hand something off to somebody else, you're entrusting them with your vision. And at any point, that vision can be bastardized, or it can just be tainted in a way. That's what makes that's what blows my mind about big films in general is how do you get the hundreds of people who you have, I mean, there's no way that Danny Boyle can manage every single thing that happens in his film. It's just not possible. He has to delegate. It's not like, you know, like a short or an indie film where you can handhold it all the way through. So it's always amazing to me keeping people that you work with on the same page at all times so that the finished product of what they do aligns 100%, you know, with your vision. And also, what if it doesn't, but it's 95%? You know, like at what point do you say, okay, you know what? That is practically perfect in my mind, but it's not perfect, but it's practically perfect. And is it 99%? Does it have to be 100%? Can it be 98? You know, like what is the point? Because it's rarely, I would assume, ever 100%. But sometimes that might be a good thing. But it's hard to, I mean, you know, like right now I'm trying to find mixers for my album, and I'm like, you know, like nobody's going to care about this record, but I am. And so it's very hard for me because I know how to mix, but I'm not the best at it, but I know what I want. And so when I'm giving stems to people, I'm thinking, okay, what are you going to send me back? Is it going to align with what I have in my head? I've told you what I want. I've written it down. And then hopefully what I get back is better than what I could have done. Like that's the goal, right? But rarely do you find those people, you know, that
rarely. And to your point, like, it's impossible. As you said, you know, Danny Boyle can't have everything, you know, his hands in everything and be able to oversee every single detail. And yet it's such a skill to be able to walk on set each day, look through the lens or look on set and say, oh, this is out of place. This is wrong. Because you have to catch it there. You won't be able to catch it later in post, probably, or you'll be editing around whatever it is. But the skill set to be able to walk onto a set and see someone else's work that they brought and say, oh, this is amazing, this adds, or this is wrong. Maybe it's just an emotional reaction, or maybe sometimes it's just I don't want this in because of XYZ reasons. Like this color is wrong, right? If you remember our pre-production meetings, or maybe this person missed that meeting and you're like, oh, we're not using red in this scene because red is going to be saved for later in the film or whatever. Like there's all these, and he has to be sharp as a tack. It's such a skill set to be able to do that and also do it in a way that you're not just alienating your crew, because that can happen too. If you come in too heavy handed and suddenly, whatever, man. Okay. You know what? I'll punch the clock from here on out because you're going to be an ass. Like I don't want to put my creative intent on display if it's just going to get kicked around. So it's a very delicate hand, and you have to be very, very sharp with people and precise, and also, you know, make sure that you're open to other interpretations and ideas. Man, it's fun. It's all fun. I hope I eventually get to experience walking onto a $5 million set and having people elevate all my ideas to something that's way better, because that's where the good shit is. Pretty much every time.
That comes with a level of professionalism, but also a level of like awareness of your role and of what's trying to be communicated to you, because there also probably not a way for you to communicate exactly what you want in the exact way for that everyone is going to receive it, you know, and be able to execute 100%. Like you have to speak to me differently than you have to speak to Scott, or that you have to speak to somebody else that comes on. And so they have to know their craft, but also they have to be able to decipher what you're saying and know you personally to know what you mean by X or Y, because like we're human, you know, it's very hard to get what's in your head out verbally, or, you know, and even written. That's why amazing writing is amazing to us still, because that's a very hard thing to do, to communicate perfectly to a wide variety of individuals. So it's hard. It's hard. I hope that for you. I hope that for you more than anything. Yeah.
Well said. So what are we going to be looking at today, man?
Yeah, so today we are covering Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire. So if you haven't seen this film, please go pause this episode and watch it. We're going to spoil a bunch of stuff. I believe it is streaming on HBO Max at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, we'll look at a whole bunch of stuff, probably mostly in brief, but we'll touch on some of the cinematography and directing, story and writing, exposition, the Dickensian aspect. We'll also talk about gift and curse of winning an Oscar, as well as have a special guest weigh in from India. One of your coworkers is a big film buff, and he has strong opinions, which I can only assume are good about a movie that takes place in your country by British people, because there's a whole good history of Brits and Indians, I'm pretty sure, called Slumdog. So yeah, nothing but good vibes coming there, I'm sure, and other such stuff and things and stuff. Irony, of course.
I know, right? That's perfect. At least you know what to expect, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He's a good dude. All right, so a quick synopsis of the film. A Mumbai teenager reflects on his life after being accused of cheating on the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's directed by Danny Boyle, screenplay by Simon Beaufoy, based on the novel by Vikas Swarup. It's cinematography by Anthony Dodd Mantle, featuring Dev Patel as Jamal Malik, Irrfan Khan as police inspector, Freida Pinto as Latika, Madhur Mittal as Salim Malik, and Anil Kapoor as Prem, the game show host.
Hello, Jamal.
I'm guessing that isn't your brother. This is?
My name is Latika.
Okay, Latika. You want to hear the question one more time? And let's be clear about this. 20 million rupees right on your answer. You have 30 seconds.
Latika!
Jamal, please read out
Salim!
the question to Latika now.
Is that really you?
Yes.
The question, Jamal, the question.
In Alexander Dumas' book, The Three Musketeers, two of the musketeers are called Athos and Porthos. What was the name of the third musketeer? Was it A, Aramis, B, Cardinal Richelieu, C, D'Artagnan, D, Blanchet?
15 seconds.
Where are you?
I'm safe.
10 seconds. Latika, what do you think?
I don't know. I've never known. Jamal, खुदा तुम्हारी के.
All right, man. So Slumdog Millionaire, what do you think?
I mean, I think the acting is phenomenal. Let's just start with that. Just watching Dev Patel work is pretty amazing to me. I like, from the opening shot, he had me like, oh, I believe this guy. He's just so good to me. I just, his ability to do very little and communicate a lot is pretty incredible to me. And I think he does that in spades in this film. And I don't know, maybe that's the ticket to an Oscar. I don't know. Is just to do nothing, your reaction is nothing. So anyway, Dev Patel, yes, but also the kids, it's, what is the famous saying in Hollywood? It's like the hardest, it's hardest to work with children and animals.
Yeah.
Half of this movie is with kids, and a lot of them. I mean, and so I loved watching the kids in this and their reactions to things, and I thought that they did an excellent job. I thought that the directing was fantastic. I liked the pacing. It's a flashback movie. The whole thing is flashback essentially. But I feel like it does a good job of coming back to present day when we feel like it's a little bit stagnant, in the past. Not that it's stagnant, but we feel like, okay, what's going to propel this forward now? They're little kids. How do we get them to grow up? And then I feel like the pacing was pretty good there. the price of things was pretty extreme. Is very hard to watch, I will say. I mean, poor Jamal, just like that kid just had his butt handed to him his entire life, from the very beginning. I mean, one thing I did like is they establish his ability to not quit instantly, from the bathroom scene where Malik locks him in, or Salim, sorry, locks him in the bathroom, and he's not going to miss out on his on getting the autograph, and so he jumps into the toilet, and then still gets the autograph. That was an incredible way to establish that guy is never going to quit, so that when he is trying to find Latika, he's never going to quit trying to find her. He's never going to quit going after her. And they established that pretty instantly. And they also established Salim as like the bad guy, essentially, for selling his autograph right after that. And you're thinking, why would he do that? It's just awful. I did love, in the end, Salim, getting Latika out, giving her the cell phone. We find out that that's the phone that Jamal is calling, and it's Latika, the clip you showed. I thought that was beautiful, and I forgot about that. And the pacing of juxtaposition between him going through that phone call and then Salim, and his end scene is really, really well edited together, I feel like, and really well paced. And then it's like a beautiful ending. I mean, all that being said, like if looking at it just from the point of view of like a story in a film, I thought it was a great story of a kid who never had anything given to him, of a kid that was just always in the worst place, or just had nothing good happened in his life. Finding a way to still not quit and to still end up, good in the end. He never went to the dark side, for lack of a better term. He never, got down on himself, even though he was sad. He never like quit. And he ended up, finding Latika, getting her. Yes, he won the game show, but he didn't even care about the money. Like, it was never about the money. It was about letting her see him, that he wanted her to find him. So, but yeah, to the point of, okay, it's made by, some English folk, in about a place that they've, had a hand in for a very long time, a negative hand. And there was never a moment of like, this is a beautiful country. There was never a moment of, this is a country of 1.5 billion people. And we want to let you know, we are just showing you a corner of this. And that's okay, because that's not what this story was supposed to be. The story was supposed to be of this kid. And if he doesn't get a break, we don't get a break, and I get that. Yeah. I get that. I do think that because we are so, as Westerners, and this is geared towards a Western audience, obviously, because I speak English and most of it, except when they're kids. I do think it hurt, our vision of what India is. I think because it was so successful and won awards and stuff. And so that does suck. But as a film in general and as a story, I thought it was beautiful. Yeah. What do you think?
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I unashamedly, because I definitely agree with what you're saying in terms of, it's easy to watch this as a Westerner and gain bad notions about India. I don't feel like this movie is ever pretending to be this grounded thing, though. And, whenever you have a kid literally jumping into a pile of poo, which turned a lot of people off, Western audiences included. Like, the number of people I heard just like kind of choke a little bit on just talking about that scene. Like, it's a comedy bit, like it's being silly. And to your great point. Like it's proving his mentality of he does not quit. He's going to get whatever he wants. It's very much a character trait for him. And what better way to demonstrate that than, kind of the Shawshank method of going towards your goal. And so, yeah, I never took this as any kind of, I don't know, documentary piece on what it's like to be in India, but certainly worth, looking at. I look at it as very much a rags to riches story, an interesting story about a kid on a game show. And we'll get into this, but just a really clever way of diving into his life story. It's just a very clever film. And yeah, I don't know that I ever really considered it Indian. Definitely, British, which is fine, or Western if you want to, broaden it, because this is certainly aimed at Western audiences, America included, of course. And so, yeah, I don't know. I love it. I have no qualms about the film. I don't think it needs to be all things to all people. And I certainly would understand, Indians, having an issue with it. That's fine to me. I don't know. I just look at it the same way as if, someone foreign made a film about America, because all the films that we make that people, watch overseas, it's not a very good representation of America either. And that's stuff that we make, like Marvel films, that's not what America looks like, right? War films, all our action films, John Wick, like all the stuff that's internationally like huge, it's not America. And so a lot of people in other countries look at America as this hyper violent country where you might get shot walking down the street. And, we can, joke about that. But it's not true, of course. There's no street in America that I'm really that afraid to walk down at any time of day. Now, you might also paint me as just a weirdo in that sense. But yeah. And so I don't know. I always look at film for what it's trying to be versus what it's not trying to be. And I never saw this film as this like real hardcore look at, what it's like to grow up poor in this part of the world. But yeah, I don't know. Regardless, and we'll come back to all of that here in a minute. I think we're about to be joined by a friend of yours. Care to introduce who we'll be talking to?
Yeah. So this gentleman I work with, Chandrashish Roy, he is a developer that we work with at my company. And we've talked a lot about movies, and he's made recommendations to me, and I've made recommendations to him and stuff. And so when RRR came out, we talked a little bit about it, and he was surprised that it was, it like had taken off in the States. And then I asked him about Slumdog, and he had some opinions and stuff. And so I thought, you know what, let's bring somebody on that lives in the country, that is there and has experienced, like this film coming out,
Nice. Well, let's see if we can get him on the line.
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting, I will jump through. So you pointed out the acting. Like, I completely agree about Dev Patel. That's probably one of the things that rub a lot of Indians, is that you have this, poor kid growing up in India with a British accent. And I think that's just kind of funny to me. But I also get exactly why he got cast, because he does physically embody so much empathy, and he communicates so well without saying a word. His ideas, his intentions, what he's feeling, like, it's such a strong performance. And my God, the child performances in this, absolutely amazing, full of nuance, full of character, and it all cuts together. It's not like they're different from one moment to the next, or the flow of the characters switch completely when you jump ages. Like, it's so good. That's great directing for sure, and just phenomenal casting. I want to say they went through just a ton of casting before they found these kids, and they just absolutely walked on set and destroyed it. Because he's a very precise filmmaker too. Like, the way he shoots is very Danny Boyle. Like we've talked about this on his other films, where just Dutch angles galore. And this feels like Dutch angle the movie. It's just it's just all over the place, and it's fun. Like it's a really great way to heighten a story like this, to keep it heightened. Like I think if you were to shoot it too normally, it feels too normal. Like all these moments feel that much more unbelievable. And it's almost like he's trying to not use these crazy angles and under cranking, the choppy sequences for dramatic effect. It would start to feel like too heartbreaking. You need to break it up through some of these other cinematic techniques to make it feel like this isn't reality. This isn't a real life, and using all these techniques is a way to elevate it into this completely other unbelievable fashion, so that you can emotionally detach a little bit and feel a little safe to watch these kids going through these horrible things because of the way it's shot, because of the way it's stylized. And I think there's a little emotional safety that he used through that. Same thing with, the high contrast, right? Not a lot of details in the highlights or the shadows. They crush the blacks, as you say, and blow out the whites so that you create this very strong image that when you're jumping around through time, there's just a lot of simple finesse that you can do into the image to make sure the audience always feels oriented and just a little bit removed from what's happening on screen. I think it's just a really intelligent way to approach such a brutal story like this. Visually, were there any moments that stuck out to you?
The Dutch angles for sure. And that you put it a great way. Like it allowed me the permission to watch what was happening. I feel like, because I felt very icky watching some of the terrible things that Jamal had to go through and that Salim did to him, honestly. It was like just really, really hard. The hotel scene being one of the hardest ones. And it was just brutal. So yeah, I just didn't, it's one of those things that, like, unless you say, no, that's the reason for that. I'm like, why am I okay with watching this? Like this feels really terrible. But, so cinematography wise, just that. And then I never really saw the cinematography. I didn't feel it, it just happened. So I guess that's a nod, right?
Absolutely, because it's a very fast film. Like they're cutting super, super quickly. So you never really hang out. Oh, and now we are joined by your friend. Yeah.
Chandrashish, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. We have this is my friend Wes, and co-operator on our podcast. And Wes, this is Chandrashish. He's the lead developer on my team. I work with him every day. Wonderful, wonderful person. And we're so honored to have you on the podcast, my friend. Welcome.
Yep. Thank you.
Could you maybe just start and tell everybody, who you are, what drew you to films in general, what you like about films, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I love to watch movies from a long time, actually. So when I completed my schooling, from that time onwards, before that I used to not watch too much movies. Even I was not into music. I used to not like music, like specifically Bollywood songs. So I used to never like it. Yeah, I still am a fan of few people, like basically rock bands. Maybe from some are from US, some are from my mother tongue, that is Bengali. So they are from, I used to love only rock bands from US or else from my mother tongue. Later onwards, when I completed my schooling, I like the interest grew on watching movies, and most of it was in the beginning movies from Hollywood, because the sci-fi movies and Marvel movies. I'm a huge fan of Marvel movies. I never miss a Marvel movie. From the time onwards I started earning, I watched all the movies in theaters, And just for an idea, for the Avengers Endgame, me and my friends actually we paid 4x of the ticket price that was in the market. Yeah, and that is only for a theater, a multiplex, and it was huge. If I give one comparison, it was 20% of our salary at that time. But we paid it and we watched it. Yes, we paid it and we watched it, and we screamed like anything. Yes, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Yeah, and here in India there is a culture. I think you have seen in RRR all these videos from India, like people are screaming in theaters. So just to give you an idea about movies in India, and specifically Todd, as you have watched RRR, so all these actors are from, if I say specifically from South India. So they actually are treated as God. So for example, you are a hero. Your movie is coming. So the day your movie will launch, or the day your movie will release, people will put like 60-foot, 70-foot placards in front of every theaters, the fan clubs. They will put milk, they will put garlands and everything. So, and the first show starts at 4 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so 4 a.m. in the morning, and it's like houseful. So in India, it's a huge thing. I was not into these things, but yeah, now like for a few years back, I am into these things, and yeah, I will say the Hollywood movies, like sci-fi movies, murder, thriller, this kind of movies actually made me interested in these things. But now I shifted to kind of realistic movies. So yeah, that's all about me.
Wow,
Nice.
that's amazing. So Wes, when your films come out, we need to release in India.
Yeah,
Because
4 a.m.
apparently-
baby.
Okay, he'll help us. Fantastic. Wes really runs the show here on the podcast. However, we've covered a little bit about what our opinions of Slumdog and the good and the tough and things like that. But really, we wanted to get the insight of people from India, you specifically, but what India in general felt about Slumdog Millionaire when it came out, how they might, if it's changed since then, and kind of the views on that, just to give you a little insight. So one of the things, what we saw when we were talking about the film, we saw very good acting. We saw very good directing, an interesting story, that's encapsulated with, these brothers that have a very tough life. But, we are aware that it can seem one-sided, but wanted to get your thought on this, since it's, it's told from the point of view of your country. So, what do you think?
I can speak for the whole country.
Right. Of course not. Yeah. I kind of painted you in a corner. Sorry.
Yeah. You can speak for Chandrashish though.
Yeah. For you.
No, I can speak my mind. So yeah. The thing, whatever you just said, like the direction, the acting, the story, everything was really good. Everything was high standard, and it was really appreciated, and people, like, basically nowadays a lot of actors from India are getting featured in Hollywood movies. I think Priyanka Chopra, I think you heard about her. So she already literally settled in US. Yeah. So there are people who are currently joining Hollywood, but at that time when Slumdog Millionaire released, the main hype was because of Anil Kapoor, the actor who played the show host. So he was basically, he still is a hero. He was a hero in his time. He used to give Golden Jubilee movies. Like whenever the movie used to release in his time, the movie used to run for 50 days, 100 days continuously like that. So those are the standards for Bollywood movies, right? If you are a good actor or not. So he still gets that respect. Nowadays, the respect that he got from Slumdog Millionaire, and the people from India was more interested about him, like getting featured in a Hollywood movie, like looking at Anil Kapoor speaking English and all these things, like, yeah, he is in these big movies and everything. Other than that, most of the other actors from this movie was unknown to the Indians, like the basic Indians. Even for me, I didn't knew about all these actors. But I have just only have one comment that I had from the beginning. It's regarding the screenplay. And I told you, Todd, before also like this. So the thing is that if you watch, like you have, I think I told you, that if you watch White Tiger, that is also a similar kind of story. But the thing is that the screenplay was written in a way where the wrongdoings or the wrong scenarios or the slums or this kind of poverty was not shown in a wrong light. Whereas for Slumdog Millionaire, what I felt is like the movie was not justifying the whole country or as a whole culture. It's the area that was shown in the movie, Dharavi, is basically just a part of Mumbai. And how it was shown or how it was portrayed in the movie, everybody is kind of struggling, everybody's kind of thief or that kind of scenario. But in reality, there are a lot of good dancers, there are a lot of good rappers who are coming out, who are famous right now, who used to be famous, who are famous right now from the same place. But it was not even showed. There was no one from that movie was shown that, yeah, they reached some heights or there are some good people and kind of things. That's the only complaint that I have. And I think most of my friends or the people I have spoken with have this same comment that everything is good. Acting, direction, story, the reality. Yeah, the reality was really truth. There was nothing wrong about it. There was nothing overdoing it. But yeah, only the way it was shown is like everything is negative, everything is wrong, or whatever is happening in that specific area is wrong. So yeah, that's one thing.
That's interesting. Does it change because this movie came out in 2008, which means that moment or that opening sequence that you're talking about in the film would have been like late 80s, early 90s. Do you feel like everything has changed, in that era that we're talking about, or does that still pretty much hold the same, in your opinion? Like, yeah, it's still way overblown out. For instance, like, in certain parts of whatever, Texas, my hometown growing up, my school wasn't that bad, but within the last several years, it's now literally second to last in Texas as one of the worst schools ever. Like, that's not really the school I went to, even though it's that bad now. I mean, it's not completely divorced either, right? There's got to be some commonality between the two. So I'm just wondering, whenever you're thinking about the timeline that the film is presenting, like, because that's not that particular, district circa 2008, it would be that district circa whatever, 1988, let's say.
No, the positive thing that came out of this movie in India is the place that the movie was talking about, Dharavi. It actually got a lot of limelight. In the beginning, it got all kinds of limelight because of all the wrongdoings. So in the news, all the wrong news was coming out, and it became breaking news. This happened, this wrong thing happened, this wrong thing happened. But actually, because of that limelight, what happened is a lot of directors, a lot of small directors or kind of things, they also wanted to cash up on that scenario. They also wanted to make this kind of movies showing the poverty, showing the bad scenarios, showing the gang things and all these things, and make money of their own or make fame of their own. Because if it doesn't goes to Hollywood or even it doesn't goes to Oscars, if it goes to a regional level also, they will become famous. But because of that, what happened is just what I said, is like a lot of creative people actually came out of that area. And now if you compare to 2008 to even 2018, like in last 10-15 years, I would say in every reality show, like whether it's a dance reality show, whether it's a singing reality show or something in India, at least one or two people actually represents Dharavi, and Dharavi actually became a brand, or that area actually became a brand. So whatever you want to do, like rapping, that kind of hip hop culture, or that kind of underground dancing thing, all those things came out of Dharavi. And people become like more inspired. Okay, we will do this kind of things. And even last year also, one movie came. I think the biggest star from India is Amitabh Bachchan. So he actually made one movie regarding that same place where a football team was made out of. So all these street boys, all these thugs, or all these poor guys or poor children, they actually made up a football team. which actually made a good results or became famous. So still it is a cash cow kind of thing. So Slumdog Millionaire, yeah, actually helped a lot of people in a positive way.
That's interesting. So so wow. Okay, that's interesting. And then but that's from when it came out until now. But what was it like back in the 80s, or early 90s? Was it better? Was it worse? Was it kind of on par with the way that the film depicts it?
No, the way the film depicts it's actually correct way. Like there, nothing was overdone or something like that. Even like when you're talking about 80s or 90s, forget about 90s. Even if you go at 70s or 80s, the Mumbai was the biggest underworld kind of scenario was present over there. So for like 10-15 years, like the police tried a lot to finish all those things, and the biggest don or kind of thing or godfather kind of person was present at that time, and all those bombings or all those things happened in 92, 93 in Mumbai. So there was a huge influence even on Bollywood. Like people from underworld used to sponsor movies in Bollywood, like by paying money. Even there were few actors who actually still are pending court cases, who actually took money from dons or underworld people. Yeah, and actually there is one person, if you search him, you will find him in Google, is Sanjay Dutt. He is still in court case, he is still in pending. So actually he also served few years. So he was actually part of the Mumbai bombing that happened in 92. So he actually kept all the guns in his place. So he was actually accused of that, and it was proven, so he actually served. But later what happened is when he was released, one of his friend kind of director made one movie on him, on his life, to make him a good person, try to make him a good person, so that he can become a good person in the audience's eye, and again he can become a hero. But in 80s and 90s, Mumbai was the worst city it can happen. Like it still is, but not in that way, because police action was taken a lot. And yeah, it was something kind of like the Godfather kind of scenario. So people used to get shot at, and people like police used to shoot out people. And yeah, there was some few polices was there who actually encountered like 100, 110, 120. Even last year, one Netflix series got released based upon these polices, like who had this most number of encounters. So it was correct in the movie depicted. Nothing wrong in it.
Wow. So if Slumdog, Millionaire isn't a great entrance for, actual Indian cinema, what would you recommend people go to as if someone likes dramatic films, right? What are the one or two films that you're like, White Tiger or something else that you think, if you really want to get into Indian cinema, dramatic kind of stuff, here's a couple of good films that might warm you up to actual Indian films?
Actually, if I give you a number, there is only from Bollywood. So Bollywood is basically the movies that is produced from Mumbai, which are basically based upon Hindi language. But in every region of India, there is a different film industry. So from like my mother tongue Bengali, so there is one movie industry called Tollywood. In South India, there is Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam. So there are all different industries. But if I talk about only Bollywood, it produces more movies than Hollywood each and every year. The number would be something around 1,600 to 2,000 each and every year. Yes. And the industry is huge. If you reach Mumbai, the whole Mumbai city is based upon only two things. Mumbai is a metro city, which was because of it's a financial hub for the whole country. Afterwards, all because of these things like this Don and this Godfather people, there was so much money was flowing around. So Mumbai became the best scenario for producing movies, because you would be easily getting money from these people to produce movies. So Bollywood became the biggest. But speaking about only few movies would be really tough for me. But yeah, I think RRR is a really good movie to get into Indian films, but there is a lot of movies. I would recommend not movies, but I would recommend somebody who is I actually because a very fan of. He is also from US. His name is Jabi Koy. So he has his own YouTube channel, but he is basically running only like he's only reviewing movie from India, all kind of movies like Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and all these things. He started when I actually started following him. His followers was something around 10,000. Today he is reaching something around 2 million, and he actually does a really good job of promoting Hindi movies or promoting Indian movies. Yeah, if you ask me specifically, I told Todd something about PK. So it's a movie that is based upon religion, all kind of religion, and it's acted by one of the best actor from India called Amir Khan. So
and
it was
PK.
PK, yeah, PK, okay. Yeah. So it became a huge hit in India, and it's a really good movie. It's about religion. It's not something about somebody who will understand only being an Indian. Anybody can understand it. It's because based upon religion, how the religion is forced upon into people's mind by showing fear and only that kind of thing. But
so
yeah, please tell me.
So really quickly, just to bring it back really quickly to Slumdog, what would you say that? So what I'm getting is that it just showed one side without any kind of to you without any kind of showing that there is the hint of something else, essentially. So that it's just negative. There is no hint to anything positive. Like that's what I kind of am getting at. What would you say is different in a film like, and we try to talk about just one film in these episodes, but just because we need kind of a reference. And what would you say the White Tiger does better in regards to painting India in a balanced light than Slumdog does?
Yeah. So if you look at White Tiger, like in a screen by screen kind of scenario, it basically is kind of a same story of a guy who is like struggling, who is poor. His father used to be a driver for a rich people. His father died, and he like got assigned to this job, and he was told that he is a servant. He will always be a servant. His next generations will become a servant. So he should not speak aloud against his masters and kind of thing. But somehow he managed to reach into that position where he started his own taxi aggregator kind of business. The thing that this movie did good about it is it made a balanced screenplay. Like there is an opportunity to become good while this person was treated, or this person was told that you always will become a servant. There are other people who is treating him in a good way, that you are not my servant, or you should not think that you should not get education, or you should not teach your like next generation going to school and things. You should do good about it. You should try to be better. And there are other people who are saying, no, you should become a slave. You should stay slave always. So there is this balanced screenplay. Like there is not like, it's not that everybody is wrong, everybody is bad in anywhere. There are some good people, there are some bad people. If you only show that there are bad people, it's not justified. It's not justify the real scenario. Even in like red light areas, or even in the prostitution business also, there are some good people who are actually helping those girls or those people to survive, or to like go forward in their life. It's not that always this business is going wrong about it, or there are only people who are behaving in a wrong way. So White Tiger is kind of a balanced screenplay compared to Slumdog Millionaire. That's what I think.
Okay. Interesting.
Nice.
Do you have any other questions, Wes?
Yeah, last question, man. Overall, what's your favorite movie?
Ooh, good one.
Okay, all over, like as in a movie.
Number one. Give me the number one.
I never actually thought about it, but yeah, I would say Shawshank Redemption.
Oh,
well done.
Look at you. Well done. I'm going to give you the golf clap. There you go.
For a lot of people, actually, if you ask, maybe 50% of the people will say this, the same answer. But yeah, it was something that actually kept you thinking, like what just happened.
Yeah. Love it.
Love it. Well, Chandrashish, we won't take up any more of your time. I think this is perfect timing. Thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate it. Hopefully it's not too late there. I know it's like, it's probably only 9:30. I work with you later than that. Okay, cool. We will let you go, but thank you so much for your insight there. It's really helped us. We didn't want to cover a movie. We didn't want to cover a movie this polarizing without hearing from someone who lives in the country. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, man. Thank you for inviting me and let me speak of my mind. Yeah.
Absolutely. Have a good night, my friend.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Wes. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, bro. Have a good one.
Bye.
Nice. Great to hear from him. Really good dude. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I expected way worse than that. So.
I honestly did too. I was ready to get it torn apart, but I think he agrees, and that just like kind of puts the nail into what we think too of the acting is great. Actually, the writing is really good, and the film is well directed. It's like really good. It's just that, if you're just beating over the head with that this kid has gone through nothing good, then it can, especially, it can take a whole people from Westerners who have no idea about India at all, and who honestly don't have a lot of idea about cinema. Let's be clear. Like you and I can look at this and we can look at it from the point of view of but the story is really about this kid, and there have been people, I'm sure, on the planet that have never gone through anything good, right? And we can sit there, but a lot of people saw this movie and that are not like that. They're just seeing it for what it is. They're like, I'm never going to India. Jeez, it's the whole country is like that. But yeah, he wasn't like that. He said, no, like actually it's a good movie. I just wish that it showed like some good part of my country. Yeah.
Which is obviously fair. Like everything you're saying, I think is spot on. But at the same time, and I'm so glad that he said that he wasn't going to speak for all of India. Like he can only speak for, himself, and he did, because I'm sure there's a whole, as every gamut, like I'm such a big fan of individualism. I'm sure there's a ton of Indians who are like, man, F that movie. Like, and then there's probably there's probably the other side where you have Indians who appreciate that Hollywood did a treatment of a film in India, and it brought maybe some people to Indian actors.
I mean, he pointed that out. He pointed that out about how it helped out the slums actually, eventually.
Which is really wild. I mean, that's the power of cinema and stories, as well as you shine light on some aspect of society. And this applies, internationally. And suddenly, what can we do? You have people, the awareness is there. You can raise money, and, change is a lot easier to escort in when it's top of mind. And so, really even handed, accounting. So big props there. So my only other comments, I have two. First, I'll look at some of the story and writing, which is very Dickensian, and that's kind of the slang for Charles Dickens, right? And this story feels like it would fit right in line with Oliver Twist and Great Expectations and David Copperfield. It feels like a Dickens film, just happens to be in India, and maybe that's part of the adaptation. I don't know. I haven't read the novel. I forgot to ask if he'd ever read that novel, because it's actually written by an Indian guy. This isn't fancied up by some Brit, with his tea and crumpets. Like, this is actually has roots in a novel written by an actual Indian diplomat, who wrote the story, became a smash hit. Apparently it got adapted to the BBC, like a radio show, as well as, of course, the movie. And so I don't know how much it was distorted. It's always tricky adapting a novel, and you're serving two different masters. The book needs to serve its own purpose, and making something work on screen, you start to change a lot, of dynamics. Maybe this is perfectly representative, or maybe it's completely different because it was adapted by a Brit and directed by a Brit. And so you start to adapt it based on your audience that you have in mind, which of course is Western audiences, as we've said, I think once at least on this show. And so, but it's still in Dickens being, I'm pretty sure he was a British writer, but to be honest, not entirely sure. I've got like Great Expectations on my list. I got a bunch of Dickens. I might get to some of that this year, but yeah, still, because, it has all these universal themes, it flows, I think, internationally, right? Themes of rags to riches, right? That's a pretty universal story of someone in poverty trying to rise above their station in life, and themes of betrayal, right? His brother, and his best friend, just stab him in the back time and time again, right? And because this is your guy, you don't really give up on him either. You never get the sense that, yes, Jamal is absolutely fed up with his brother, but it's still his brother. You never get the sense that he's ready to just kill his brother, despite his brother pointing a gun in his face, for instance. And so, like, a lot of heavy themes of betrayal. Same thing with Salim betraying, right, his boss, and as well as hopeless romanticism, right? That's a pretty universal, like this idea of an unrequited love, or just pursuing your goals and your passions, without regard to self, and as well as hope, right? You have hopeless romanticism as well as just unbridled hope and optimism. That all plays part and parcel into so many themes of so many stories, and it just fills you with so much hope. And that's what really gives us this movie redemption is its unabashed hope, despite XYZ, despite, having his mom killed, in front of him, right? And despite, becoming an orphan, despite, it just is nonstop. And it's that level of hope that keeps us engaged with the film. And it's also what I think is so useful about the way this movie is exposited, because let's start with the opening. It's a very strong opening, right? Of a contrast of Jamal being tied up and interrogated, right? And then intercutting that with him being on a game show. You're just like, what is going on? It grabs your attention right away. And the game show is just a brilliant use of plot and exposition. What a great device to give us an avenue seamlessly to understand backstory. And like you said, this whole movie is nothing but backstory. It's all flashback. And it's so beautiful because you could have told this linearly, right? It could have ended with the game show at the end and you understand, oh, he's got the answer to that. Oh, he's got the answer to that. Of course. You could have done that, but intercutting it with the future gives you hope, gives you a sense of destination. Because if you had started at the beginning, oh my God, we would have poured chemicals into our own eyes. Like we would have said, you know what, I'm escaping right now. But starting at the end gives you a very strong sense of, okay, we're going to get through this. And that's such a beautiful way to keep the audience tuned in to something good happening at the end of this thing. And it's also a really great way to intercut the show, allows for faster, cutting, literally, just jump, so that you never hang on too long to any specific moment, as well as to fast storytelling itself, right? And so it's just a much more dynamic story. A great way to jump in time, also like switch actors, right? And if we intercut with a long moment of him in real time, then when we go back and we've jumped 10 years, it doesn't feel as jarring because, we've had this lag in time within the edit of being in present time Jamal before we go back and see a new Jamal. And so it's just a really great device in so many ways it's one of those, like, you as a writer, you see this happen and you're like just kicking yourself. You're like, oh, why did I never have this idea? Mm-hmm. It's one of those 1 in a million ideas that you just kick yourself over. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Because it also takes advantage of, this pop culture phenomenon of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. When this thing came out, it was huge everywhere. Like, I never would have guessed it was huge in India, but it was huge in America. Even I watched it. Like, maybe not like every episode, but I watched a lot. I watch more than 2 or 3, and it takes advantage of all the things that you love in life of, overnight millionaire success, quizzes, pop culture references, great dramatic music, a lovable host, like all those things. And just to, rearrange it and use it into a story of this magnitude that literally plays on those same themes of what do you know and why do you know it, as well as, overnight success. Like, it's just perfect Venn diagramming of like 20 things.
Yeah. And then, but also to your point about like showing why he knows it, having all these negative things that have happened in his life be the reason why he knows these answers, right? Because we talk all the time about, and I'm guilty of this, about, why God do you let bad things happen? And we really do not know. We really do not know, why bad things happen to people, especially good people like Jamal. We just, but to have clarity, to give the audience clarity of this kid has had the worst life and the worst things happen to him. And because of that, he not only wins this game show, but he connects again with the love of his life. What would have happened if those bad things wouldn't have happened? I mean, probably still would have been happy, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a terrible way to get there, but he got there. And I think that it's just a beautiful reasoning to go through something terrible in order to end up, something wonderful at the end.
That's such a good point. Like, for one, stuff sticks in our memory with negative connotations so much easier. But it also, I think, that's such a good point, that the idea that hoping bad things happen for a reason, and this kind of giving you the reason for that, that's a pretty cool, idea. And it's not exactly top layer, but it's in there. And it's such a really good, philosophical approach to telling this kind of story. I love that. There's a couple of moments in here that I really love. One of them is this really great heartbreaking moment whenever he finally finds her, right? Jamal finds Latika and he's telling her, run away with me. I love you. And she says, so what? Wow. This guy just spent the entire movie looking for this girl through hell and high water, right? He changed cities. He's basically going door to door through Mumbai. Do you know this girl? And to finally find her, and her answer is, so what? And you, in the moment, it's heartbreaking, but you also understand, she's faced with, okay, I can run away and maybe get caught and maybe pay a big price. But then what do we have to live on? There's this kind of practical aspect of just living. And it's such a good punch in the stomach that I think pays off so well, because within the next scene, minutes later, she's showing up anyway. I love that she shows up to the train station because she really does love him. That's a really, if you don't have that moment, and you just wait until he wins 20 million rupees.
It's a great point. Yes.
Oh, you hate her. Suddenly she is not someone that you want him to be with. You're you're too good for her. Kick her to the curb. No, you need this moment where she shows up for this broke guy and just for love. Oh,
that's a great point. I didn't even think of that. And that's probably, I don't know if that was in the screenplay. I'm going to assume that it wasn't, and that this was the brilliance of Danny Boyle, because I think that he's an amazing director. But to have that as an established, for her to be a realist, because she's lived in this terrible world her whole life, and say, so what? So you love me. What else? I didn't view that as just monetary, but I can see how people could, right? Because she does say, what would we live on? Because you can tell, she does want to go with him, and she would if she could, but she feels like she can't get away. But to then go that extra mile and have her actually show up, he's at the train station. We know he's going to be, because we trust that he's going to do everything. We know who he is. We don't know who she is necessarily yet, right? We don't know that she will also do everything she can to be with him. And so to see her show up, to like get out of that house, to show up at the train station, and for her to be screaming his name as they drag her away, like, you know, and fighting, not acting like, oh yeah, no, she's yelling his name. It was necessary 100%. Now we know she wants to get away. She wants to be with him regardless of whether or not he has money, and to get away from that life to be with him. It's such a, you know, it's probably the most pivotal, one of the most pivotal scenes in the movie, now that you mention it, because if we don't have that, then the rest of it all falls flat, right? Like, to take out that scene. Now, all of a sudden, you're right. We don't like her because she just wants to be with him because he's got $20 million. We don't know that she would go to the ends of the earth or like, you know, possibly like sacrifice her life to do it. And we don't really understand Jamal's motivation either for going on the show, right? So because yeah. Anyway, I think it definitely falls flat without that scene. It's super important. Great point there.
It's super important. My other writing note is I love how in this film all the white people we meet are rubes. Like, they're just idiots. I think that's a lovely touch. Because we run into this, I don't know if they're British or maybe one of them was a Brit. When he's given the tour, I think the husband is a Brit and maybe the woman is from somewhere else. But then we run into the Americans later on. Well, we'll show you how we do things in America. And the other thing, writing wise, I guess it's also a directing note, but the opening shot of Jamal being interrogated, I love that the text pops up, and that's kind of that's a literal, you know, reference to the Millionaire game show. We're getting, you know, multiple choices. And so it's kind of putting the audience to the test. But also love that the text pops up out of sync with the music. And that just kind of surprised me watching it, that it's not synced up to the ticking of that clock, that doot, like it just pops up on its own time. And I wonder how that happened. I mean, I love that decision. I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of other directors, especially, you know, younger directors, would want to sync it up to some kind of beat. But I feel like Danny Boyle maybe did one of two things. One, wanted it to pop up out of sync so that it stands out a little bit stronger. Popping up in sync, I think it loses a little bit of punch, oddly enough. The other thing is, I wonder if maybe he was reading it aloud and doing it dramatically like a game host would do, and just let the chips fall where they may. Right. You know, Jamal is about to answer the $20 million questions. Is it A? Da-da-da-da. Is it B? Right. I think it's a performative thing too, of like, how do I think this would be performed? Let's time it according to that and ignore, you know, the sonic implications of that being out of sync with what's happening. That just fascinated me, because that is very much not the kind of thing that you would normally see with text popping up on screen. My last note or thought, I don't even know, conversation, is the fact that this movie got made at all and got released on screens is really interesting. And this goes back to what I said at the top, which is we'll be talking about the gift and curse of winning an Oscar. For one, this movie getting made is really, amazing, because Danny Boyle had to have a really strong conviction about the story in order to go make a film in India, mostly subtitled. Like, the vast majority of this film is subtitled. That's why I couldn't play like a really great clip. It's because all the best clips are, in Hindi, and with unknown actors. Like for me, the most well-known actor in this film is Irrfan Khan, the police inspector. And I think this was probably my introduction to him. Probably, like, I'd seen him in one or two other films, but I didn't know him as Irrfan Khan until this movie, and then became just a massive fan of his. But to say, give me whatever it was, $10 or $20 million. I don't know what the budget was. probably not a $40-50 million film. And to say, yeah, let's go make this movie. And then to do it at all is nuts. But then to get a wide release, this almost went direct to video. This was a hair away from going direct to video, because Warner Brothers sold off or closed down the branch, this independent film branch that this was made under. And they were like, just basically going to cash out and just, whatever, let's just expunge all these films. And they opened it up to co-distributing or something. And I've already forgotten. But I think Fox Searchlight came along and said, oh, we'll distribute. And this was like the only film I think that got picked up for theatrical distribution of all the films that were getting shut down. And so it played on a few screens, then it played on a few more. I went to see it in a theater opening day. I dragged my friend Juwan, who has an Emmy. He's like a Emmy award-winning producer. He wasn't at the time, but I say that to point out he's a film buff. He's a film guy. And he didn't know anything about this film. He was like, all right, whatever. Wes wants to go see a film. Well, I'll roll with Wes. We went, and there's probably like 5 people in the theater. I mean, it was not a very packed out theater. And that was the life of this movie. It was, man, walking out, we were both like, whatever, high-fiving each other, not literally, but we were just really excited about it. Man, that was great. It was great. And then I just started dragging people to the theater because I was like, you got to see this movie. And so I dragged I probably saw this 5 times in theater, just trying to drag people to go see it.
Wow.
No kidding. And because I was like, this is such a good movie. No one's going to watch it because it's full of a bunch of Indian actors no one's heard of, in subtitles. And so I'd grab my mom, like, Mom, let's go watch this movie. And my mom is the last person that she hates reading. I don't think she's ever read an entire book in her life.
Wow.
She does not like reading. And so I drag her to the theater, like, Mom, just shut up. Trust me. I'll do you right. And so we go, and she's walking out crying. Now she's dragging people to the theater to go watch it.
Whoa.
Absolutely. And then those people are like doing the dance at the end. The dance number at the end is so amazing. It's so good. And it's just a little hint at, Bollywood. And people, she bought the movie, and then she was watching it with her stepdaughter, and they're all trying to do the dance together. Like, it just became this very point of love for so many people. And I just kept doing that. I kept dragging people to the theater to go watch this thing until it wins an Oscar. And that changed everything. Suddenly, theaters are packed. It's re-released. And now the theaters are packed. Like, what is this movie? And then once you do that, everyone's talking about it. And then it becomes this big cultural phenomenon. And that's the gift of winning an Oscar. And I think that's the importance of the Oscars, is to curate for people who aren't aware of what good films are out there. Because otherwise, people never know about this. People never know about Moonlight. Like, there's so many films that, people get introduced to because of the Oscars. And that's why I get so bent out of shape whenever I see films that aren't worthy of being an Oscar nomination, getting nominated. I'm like, y'all are doing a PR tour now. This isn't about, the quality of the film, because so often they do a great job of nominating and rewarding films like Slumdog Millionaire. But then there's also the curse of it, because something like this wins an Oscar, and then all the world is aware of it. People in India probably go from like, I don't understand why nobody's watching Slumdog Millionaire. Like, it's everything y'all say y'all want. And then everyone starts watching, and it's like, this is not a good representation of India. Like, it's a gift and a curse, because I believe deeply in my heart, if it never wins an Oscar and it never becomes this mainstream success, a lot of people in India are like, yeah, it's a good movie because the story is good and it's really interesting, and it's, storytelling, the approach, the style. It's like, see, people, I don't know why people would just never give Indian films a chance, even though it's not really an Indian film. I think it lives on this other plane of existence of, it just got a bad beat, just got a bad rap, along with so many other Indian films. PK or whatever, so many films. I have one I'll recommend, The White Tiger, being another similar one. Great film. I'm glad he brought that one up. I forgot about that film, and it's such a good movie. But I just think, there's a gift and a curse of having that much attention, that much acclaim being heaped onto one movie that's about some completely, foreign culture to Western audiences. There's good and bad. Hopefully, my hope, and it's a dim one, my hope is that people watch it with the understanding that it's a movie. You're watching a movie, not real life. It's not a doc. It's not a documentary. And hopefully, most audiences, obviously not all, because that's not the world we live in, but hopefully most audiences walk in and say, oh man, that was such a good story, and leave it at that, and just appreciate it for that, for a really emotional and interesting Dickensian kind of story. And yeah, I think that's all I got. I don't know. What do you got in response to all that?
I got nothing to add. I think that we've already said everything.
Yeah. It almost went direct to video. That's crazy. This movie that won a Best Picture, that should really help highlight the thin razor's edge of making art. That this movie that had so much potential in it could have went direct to video. How many films are getting released that have Oscar potential that because they just never found the right audience, never saw that potential realized? And that could be you. Maybe your film, maybe your story, maybe your album is a Grammy Award winning album, Todd, because it just never finds the right audience. You never know. How many, this bugs me so much. There's so many songs that become hit songs that I'm like, this isn't a great song. It's only getting plays because of who made it, not because of the song itself. I mean, there's plenty of Jay-Z songs that, go, mainstream that I'm like, this is a very mess song, Jay. Like because it's you, it gets a lot of love, but show me what you got. Like, it's not a great song. It's a song. It's meant for mainstream pop consumption, and that's fine. But it's not the best that Jay-Z has to offer. So yeah, I that just really fascinates me, and again, I think it's just the importance of our podcast, of awards, to highlight and bring out like really interesting films that don't get a lot of attention. And so as much as I love that we cover Marvel films here and there, I also love that we cover like little films. Eventually I'm really excited to look at something like City of God and City of Men, because those are really well known, as far as the indie circuits go, but mainstream, movie goers don't really know about those kind of films. And having City of God win a Best Picture probably would have done a lot for that industry. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway. So yeah, I think I punched myself out.
Well, you had a lot to say, and I agree. Great film. Loved having Chandrashish's insight into that. That was awesome to have him on, and yeah, everything has some kind of audience. It's just a matter of, can you reach that? Can you identify what that is and then reach them? And, do you have the right team around you to help do that? In this day and age, you need less of a team with social media sometimes, but sometimes, that's not the right route either. So you just got to do what you feel like you need to make, and then put it out there, and then let the chips fall what they may. Yeah, my album might win a Grammy. Probably not, but it might. And that's why I'm making it, right? Yeah. Your films might win an Oscar one day. Like, that's why I'm working on them. Like, that's the whole point of why we do what we do, and why you should do what you do, and not be scared or apprehensive about doing it. Just do it unabashedly your way, and put your voice and your spin on it, and see what happens. It's crazy that this almost went straight to video. That's crazy.
It's nuts.
Man, unbelievable. Yeah.
What are you going to recommend this week?
Yeah. So this week I'm gonna recommend a new film. Well, it's kind of new. It's new to Netflix, but I just never saw it when it was in the theater. I'm gonna recommend A Man Called Otto, Watched that recently, and I just thought it was a beautiful portrayal that Tom Hanks does of an older gentleman, and the kind of like ornery guy, and your impact on other people's lives without you necessarily knowing it. I thought it was beautiful. So yeah, I'm going to recommend A Man Called Otto.
Nice. I'm going to recommend, there's so many good Indian films that I like. I don't like them all. I don't like Bollywood type stuff normally. We'll see. But like The Namesake was probably my first entry into Indian cinema. And The Lunchbox is what I'm going to recommend this week, though. If you're a fan of Irrfan Khan, or you don't know, like if you've seen whatever Slumdog and Life of Pi, you probably like Irrfan Khan. I think he's amazing. He's also amazing in treatment. But I really love him in The Limelight and The Lunchbox. It's a very small indie film. It's beautiful. And it's just a drama. And it's about a guy who gets a lunch delivered that's meant for someone else. And in it, he establishes a relationship through notes and letters with the person who sent it. And it just kind of blossoms and develops from there. It's a really clever film. It's really beautiful and has a lot of heart and thought behind it. Yeah, so I highly recommend it. I also just highly recommend going down an Irrfan Khan. I was so upset when he passed because I really had in my heart I was going to get to work with him.
Oh,
bummer. So yeah, sorry.
Bummer. Yeah. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Artist Spotlight. There was a great artist out of India I got to interview a couple years ago for a project that I'm working on. Her name is Kashin. Or Kashin. I completely forgot how to pronounce it, but in my mind, it's always Kashin. And you can find her on Instagram at kashin.art. That's KASHIN.art. And I'll link it in the show notes. She's wonderful. She's an artist that has a really interesting perspective for an early chunk of her art. She did a lot with like fingers, and she was just fascinated with fingers. And so she built a lot of art out of fingers. I think she switched her style recently. And she still does really interesting work. And I highly recommend checking her out, and stay tuned for next week. Are you good with this? Okay. Well, we'll check out RRR. We didn't want to leave it there as Slumdog being the only representation on our podcast. So why not check out the smash hit? I have not seen it yet. And so I go in with great trepidation because there are so many. Three Idiots is another big Indian film. I have mixed feelings on that one, but RR has been just this global phenomenon. And so I'm interested to see why, see if I connect with it. So stay tuned for that next week. We'll see how it goes. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review, leave us a note if there's something you want us to talk about, kind of things you find interesting. And if you want to comment on this episode in particular, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/slumdogmillionaire.
And our quote of the day is Charles Dickens from Great Expectations. Suffering has been stronger than all other teaching and has taught me to understand what your heart used to be. I have been bent and broken, but I hope into a better shape. That's such an amazing glass half full, positive way of looking at terrible things that happen in your life, or difficult things that happen, or walls that you have to break through. And I just love that. I mean, I try to be an optimist as much as possible, sometimes too blind. Sometimes I purposely put blinders on. But I don't necessarily know why. You know, a lot of times I feel like I do just to get through it, right? Like, because if I'm negative, that doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit the people around me. So just try to be positive about everything. But I don't always know why I do that. But this is really wonderful because it kind of gives meaning to the why of, okay, this bad thing happened to me for a reason. Let's just call it a reason. Because why else? If there is no reason, then that's just a really shitty thing that happened and I'm just going to whine about it. But if I call it a reason, okay, what can I learn about it? About myself. How can I respond to this? And how is that, bending me into something better, into something more resilient, into something more positive, as an example of something that of someone who's gone through something difficult and come out better for it on the other side. That's really beautiful. Amazing.
Well said. Yeah, I also like it in the context of this film. I feel like the Jamal at the end is not that different from the Jamal at the beginning.
Great point.
Everything he went through came to something better, I think. Yeah. And that's hard. Yeah. Everything you're talking about is right on point. Like the ability to like have some layer of protection, but also vulnerability in the face of all these things that we experience throughout a life. Like, man, yeah. Hopefully, you can have some level of silver lining or optimism that just says, okay, this sucks right now, but maybe something good can come out of this. As Mr. Rogers always said, look to the helpers when tragedy strikes.
Yeah. Like the one thing that's difficult, I think, for films to like this to portray is, and even this film is, it's easy to show a story of someone who's gone through, a lot of difficult things and a lot of time, and for them to still be positive and stuff at the end, right? Like it's just, that's who they are. That's their character. But to be the person to go through an entire life. I mean, we're not talking about just like, here's a scene where something bad happens and then we go to him sitting in the chair and, answering questions on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then something bad happens. Right. Like we're as a viewer having breaks. We're seeing him instantly. Now he's older, and then now he's younger. Now he's older. But in real life, it is time. Time is a long time. Yes, it goes by fast, but it also goes very slow. And so to as a reminder of this, just like, and it's easy to read this quote and think, wow, that's a beautiful quote. And I agree. But like let's identify the fact that life is a long time, and it's especially long when bad things happen to you. Going through a loss can feel like an eternity before you feel better. Even if it's 6 months, that 6 months can feel like an eternity, can feel like 10 years. So just stay the course. I think that's the biggest thing that I can take from this, as opposed to the film, is that a film is just a snapshot. It can only be 2 hours long. It can only be 2.5 hours long, right? Whereas your life is years. And it could be years of awful things, awful feelings of like wanting to quit. And, it's beautiful to see this character and say, wow, he never quit. That's awesome. That's amazing. I want to aspire to that. But then to take that into the real world, into your real life, and to stay the course for years is a whole nother story. So yeah, I don't know.
Well said, man. Yeah.
Anyway. Beautiful. I loved this episode, man. I think this was wonderful. I love that you love this film. I love this film. And I think in a way, Chandrashish loves this film too. He's just careful about
absolutely,
as his own person. I appreciate him coming on the show. Appreciate you allowing him to come on the show. Thank you guys for joining us. If there's a recommendation you'd like to see us do, please recommend it. Who knows? We might do it. Please share us with your friends, review, subscribe. All that stuff really helps. We really appreciate it. And join us next week. We'll be covering RRR. Very much looking forward to hearing what you think about that, Wes. And until then, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. I don't have anything I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh gosh.